So at the moment, the main ingredient in our rations is this oat hay, and it comes from not too far away, just on the other side of the mountain. We'll be getting a whole bunch more of it in pretty soon. That's actually from this valley, so it's really close to home. That's one of our things, is we like to get ingredients that are local and close to home. So you can see you can see the actual oats in there, like the seed heads. Those have a lot of nutrient value, and then there's like the leaves. They're long and skinny. And then these stems, actually, they're the least amount of nutrient value, but they get ground up in the ration and they get eaten with the rest of it. So they provide a lot of fiber, which is good for the diet in the cattle. So that's our main roughage, is what we call it. Like, it's rough. It's kind of somewhat similar to what they would eat on the range, right? Like when there's grass. It's kind of similar to it. So that is oat hay. We've also used wheat hay. We've used barley hay. We've used some grass hays. But at the moment, the bulk of most of our rations, or the main roughage source in our rations, is this oat hay. Another really common ingredient in a lot of rations, not just ours, is alfalfa. Alfalfa is a very nutritious legume, and so we do use it quite a bit. Alfalfa is a little bit different. Its nutrient content is a little higher, so like its protein content is higher. You can see like the leafiness, right? That's where most of that nutrient lies, is in those leaves. There's still plenty of stem though. That just gets ground up and utilized, kind of like the stems from the oat hay, right? It just provides more fiber and roughage. The other thing that alfalfa adds to the ration for us is like palatability or taste. I guess flavor, if you were talking about human food. And I've always thought alfalfa smells really good, and I think the cattle do too. They really like to eat it, so it's an important part of our ration. The oat hay is the main source of roughage in our rations, and so when you watch the feed being made, it looks like there's a lot more oat hay. I mean, and there is more, but it's higher volume, right? Like one scoop of corn weighs the same as almost 2 bales of oat hay. So, I mean, it takes up a lot more volume. So the rations that have more corn, when you look in the feed wagon, it looks like there's not much going on because most of the weight is corn. But the rations that are mostly oat hay, it's like kind of starting to fill up, go over the top, because it just takes up a lot more volume. There's a lot more fiber. It's a lot less dense of a feed stuff. So as far as the corn portion of our rations, we use flaked corn, steam flaked corn. So it goes through a steamer and a roller. And I guess the main reason for that is it kind of starts the breakdown or the process on the corn. So like instead of just having a whole kernel of corn, we talk about like the microorganisms in the rumen that do most of the work. Well, look how much more access they have to the nutrients in the corn in this type of corn, where it's been smashed and kind of like opened up, and it's been steamed. So that's changed like some of the composition of the nutrient. So research has shown that that's the best utilization when it comes to feeding corn, is steam flaked corn. So there's ground corn, there's just rolled corn, there's different options, cracked corn. But they found through research that the most effective utilization of corn comes when it's steam flaked, so that's why we use it. When I was in college, I took a lot of nutrition classes. Technically, my focus was reproductive physiology, but when I was in graduate school, they offered a lot more nutrition classes there than reproduction classes, so I ended up taking a lot of nutrition classes. And so that's kind of what gave me my foundation for pretty basic understanding of nutrition in cattle. And like I said, we rely on professionals. That's all they do. Like, they're nutrition consultants, and they are the ones that really keep us like right on the edge, or right where we need to be. And fortunately, we can get it pretty close to home, just right on the other side of the mountain, 60, 70 miles away. We get it delivered here by the semi-load weekly. So I wish that the people watching the video could smell what we're smelling right now. These are dried distiller's grains, or DDGs, and they smell so good. I don't think they taste very good, like to me, but they smell really. It's kind of like vanilla. When you smell vanilla, you're like, oh, I want that. And then you taste it and you're like, oh, that doesn't taste very good. But DDGs smell really good. They are a byproduct of the distilling process. So when the grain goes to the distillery, they extract, the alcohol, whatever parts that they're extracting, and then this is what's left over. So it's a dry byproduct of another industry. So it's kind of cool. We can use a byproduct that otherwise, again, what do you do with it if you don't feed it to cattle? So it's kind of cool. We get to utilize it. It smells really good. Like I said, it's very fine. We got to be careful, if it's really windy, it can kind of get blown around. But that's why we add water to our ration at the end, is to try to help bind this kind of ingredient that's pretty light and pretty small, and get it distributed evenly throughout the ration. They're included at a very small amount because they have a lot of fat. They have a lot of other things that we like about them, and they do their thing, but at a small level. They're not a big portion of the ration at all. The main thing about DDGs is it's dry. It's almost powder. It's just completely dry. So all of the internal, more moist parts of the grain has been extracted during that distilling process, and we're left with a dry grain that still has good qualities about it, even though it's missing something from its original form. It has good qualities that we utilize in our rations. Some of you may have heard of cake. I know that sounds kind of funny, like cattle cake. It's basically cubes. They're sometimes called range cubes that are utilized as a supplement, like a way to supplement cattle on the range, and they're kind of rolled into a tube. I don't have any here, but it's basically that what they do is they take these dried distiller's grains and they pack them into a tight tube with a little bit of moisture, and then they come out in like a little, well, it's not a cube, it's like a little tubular shaped piece of cake is what they call it. And so this is the same ingredient that goes in cattle cake. We just use it in a different form here. So we keep a close eye on our inventory and where we're at with each ingredient. We try not to get too far in advance because we want the ingredients to stay fresh and to come fresh. And so we try to keep a close eye on our inventory, and when it gets low, we order more and then it comes. But every day we're utilizing basically the same ingredients. Every once in a while we have to make an adjustment, and we change the ingredient, and we do it slowly so that it's not too much of a stark change for the animal's digestive system. But for the most part, we use these ingredients for all of our rations, just at different levels. We mix them together at different levels to achieve whatever we're trying to meet for their nutrient requirements. So the very last step before the water is a custom vitamin and mineral package that we have made over in Wilcox. So it comes in 50-pound bags, and it has the micro and macro minerals as well as the vitamins that the cattle need, but in like a high concentration. And so this is a very small amount of the ration. Like, for example, in most of our rations, this is mixed in at between 2.5% and 4% of the entire ration as fed is this mineral and vitamin mix. So it's just granular. It has things like limestone for calcium and other trace mineral sources. It has a vitamin pack in it. So it's just to cover our bases as far as the macro and micro mineral needs of the cattle here. Makes it nice in 50-pound bags for the weight. Like if it says we need 200 pounds in this load, then we know, okay, 4 bags. And we try to keep this coming every week or so that it stays fresh and that nothing gets really old or stale or definitely not, we don't like to see mold or anything like that. So we keep everything coming so that it stays fresh. So after the mineral, water is the last thing that we add at the end. So as the augers spin and the knives chop the stems and mix everything, we have water being added, but we're watching the scale. And so most of our rations have water added at like 7 to 9%. And that just, again, it helps bind everything together. So it helps the minerals and the dried distiller's grains and the corn be distributed throughout the ration with the hay and with the alfalfa, and helps the ration not be so dusty, right? Like if it gets too dusty, it's harder for the cattle to eat more of it. So we wet it down a little bit to make it more palatable so that their intakes can stay up.
Often called the mushroom of immortality, reishi is the top-selling nutraceutical mushroom species worldwide. In nature, it grows on hardwood trees and is well known for supporting general wellness and vitality. Reishi has been shown to be a potent immune system regulator and stress reducer and is frequently used in traditional Chinese medicine. Taken in the evening, reishi can help calm the body, giving you a peaceful night's sleep so you can wake up feeling fully refreshed and ready to take on the day.
So the feed wagon is actually a pretty cool piece of equipment because of how well it mixes everything up. You think we pour dried distillers grains down in there and corn, like that stuff's just gonna be sitting at the bottom. And yet when you come over here and grab a handful of it, you can see all of the ingredients in any handful of feed at any point in the bunk. So it's pretty incredible. You go down right here, anywhere down there, you see corn, you see DDGs, you see oat hay, you see alfalfa. Everything is there. It's mixed up. It's incredible. So that's how we know that the cattle are getting what we think they're getting, because it gets mixed up and distributed evenly throughout the bunk. So these cattle behind me are calves that were pretty fresh weaned. Like they've been off their moms maybe a couple weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks, and so they're still kind of adjusting. Like their rumen's getting used to the new feed. They're getting used to being here, being away from their moms. They're doing really good. Like you don't hear a lot of bawling. They've been pretty healthy, and but they're still adjusting. Like if you look at these cattle compared to some others that we'll see in a minute, they don't look like as full, as big. It's because they're just kind of getting going. It's pretty dry year, so they came off the range looking okay, but not by any means like super fat or fleshy is another term that we would use. But they're doing good. They're getting going, and their intake's been good, and their health has been good. So we like where they're headed. This is McCoy. Some people call him the boss man around here. Can you say hi? Hi. He fortunately gets to be around here a lot and see what we do, and he listens to all my phone conversations, so we don't have any secrets. McCoy knows what goes on here at the business. So McCoy, maybe you can tell everybody, what do we do first thing in the morning when we get here?
Feed.
But right before that, remember when we drive around, what do we check?
The bunks.
And what do? We get on the app and we make some adjustments. Yeah, that's how we know. The cattle are the ones that tell us when it's time to be fed more or to decrease the amount of feed they're getting. Because when we come first thing in the morning, we check the bunks, and if they're just like real slicked off, then we know that they need to be increased just a little bit. If there's a little bit of feed left over, then we know it's about right or close. If there's a lot of feed left over, then we know we need to decrease it. So that's what we do first thing in the morning, is check bunks. So these heifers behind us are a different class of cattle. I mean, they're older, they're all heifers, and they are here to be developed. So we call it like heifer development. Basically, they're on a little bit different ration than the calves next door, and they are limit fed. So every morning their bunk is real clean because we're purposely feeding them a little bit less than what they would eat if they could eat as much as they wanted. And that's because we're trying to grow them more slowly. So we're purposely not trying to push them or get them to grow at a super high rate. They're just here to gain a pound and a half a day, just a slow growth, get themselves ready to be bred. And so that's why they're here. It's a different scenario than the calves next door. These heifers are older and they've been weaned a lot longer. So we've had very little problems with their health. They basically just kind of do their thing, eat their ration every day, slow growth, really healthy. And we just kind of keep an eye on them and again, get them ready to be bred for their very first time. A heifer is a female that has not had a calf yet, is still kind of younger. And a steer is a bull calf that's had his testicles removed so that he can focus more on growing and producing beef and less on getting ready to breed. The first pen that we looked at, it's mixed. There's heifers and steers. We're gonna sort them eventually, but since they've been kind of coming in different groups, we just put them all together. So as soon as they kind of get good and weaned, we'll probably sort them up and start feeding them a little bit differently. But not all heifers are kept for breeding. A lot of heifers go into like the beef production chain, and so they'll be fed pretty similarly to the way steers are fed. As far as being able to tell, obviously the parts are different, but from a distance it can be kind of hard to tell. The steers, like, they have their sheath you know, where they urinate from like the middle of their body, like right underneath their belly. And a lot of times you can spot that pretty quick, whereas obviously heifers don't have that. That's the main way, just from a distance, like without knowing, you can kind of spot the difference that way. There are some other more subtle differences that are harder to tell, but that's the easiest way from a distance. That's a pretty common misconception, is that only bulls have horns, which is understandable, right? Because with elk and deer and other wildlife, like the males are the only ones that grow antlers or horns. And so that is not true. It's a trait that it's a genetic thing. So gender has nothing to do with it. However, a lot of people have gotten away from horns in their herds. And so they'll purposely choose bulls that are genetically polled, which means no horns. And then they try to spread that through their herd so that horns are less prevalent. So yeah, nothing to do with gender, mostly a breed characteristic. But these days, we've been on that train for no horns for so long that most breeds that are commercially available don't have horns. There's a few that are still, but for the most part, no more horns, because we purposely chose those animals that didn't have it and then passed those genetics on. We don't have any rodeo stock around here. We wouldn't be opposed to feeding them if someone said, hey, will you feed my rodeo stock? That would be fine, but we don't have any at the moment. That's something I don't know a whole lot about as far as like producing them or managing them. But yeah, if someone wanted to feed them, we could sure do that. This facility, most of the facilities here were built 5 to 8 to 10 years ago, and then they sat empty for a period of time until last year when we started feeding cattle here again. So we're still leasing this property. It's about 150 acres of land. Much of it is still just open land that's not really being utilized directly. We do use some of that land to let cattle get out and have some more space, depending on what they are. So there's a lot of room for expansion in the future if it comes to that, which is good. We have done some improvements to the property, right? I mean, it's just mostly upkeep though, like fixing welds and fixing water lines and maintaining water troughs and some improvements. We have built one new pen since we've been here, and we used a similar design as what was here already. If you want to check these out, like these bunks are kind of cool because it's just a concrete bottom, and then these ones aren't bricks, but down there it's actually just like cinder block back, and then a 2x12 piece of lumber for the front. And the reason why I like that is because the bunk, instead of being round, it's square. It's like 90-degree angles in the corner, so it holds more volume. And then the board, since it's not like perfectly flat, it doesn't seal off. So when it rains, the water has a way to kind of like drain out the bottom instead of building up and just holding all that water in with the feed. So we kind of like this. So when we built our new pen, we did the same type of design with a concrete bottom, cinder block back, and a board front. And we like it. I think we think it works pretty good. It's pretty common, especially when you get a new group of calves, that one or two will get out, like during the night or something. But the cool thing is there's a perimeter fence, so they really can't go far away. But honestly, it's kind of funny. They get out because of whatever reason, like they get kind of pushed out, and they just turn around and start eating again. So they don't really go very far. This is where they're comfortable. And maybe that's kind of good for some people to hear, because some people might think like, oh, the cattle don't want to be there. They don't like being confined. But truly, when they get out, they don't choose to run back to the mountains. They literally just turn around and start eating again. So it's kind of interesting. Like, cattle are comfortable here. They have space, they have feed, they have water, and that's what they want to do. They want to eat, and they want to be comfortable. So cattle have what we call a flight zone. So honestly, people do too. We just think about it a lot differently because we're not being like moved around in groups, right? But just like with humans, like if someone comes and gets like right in your bubble, what are you gonna do? You're either gonna like push them away, or you're gonna back away, right? Because they're in your bubble, like they're in your space. And so that's kind of a good way to think of cattle have a flight zone. Like they have a zone of where they feel pressure. So depending on how cattle were raised, how much they've been around humans, or how much they've been handled, like that flight zone changes in size. And so cattle that are pretty dang gentle, like that maybe grew up in someone's backyard, their flight zone is like maybe a foot. Like you literally have to get right up on them to get them to move. And cattle that grew up like in the middle of nowhere, like up in the mountains, see humans once a year, their flight zone might be like a quarter mile. Like they might see you coming from a quarter mile and like they're out of there. So it's important to understand that flight zone. And then you can position yourself accordingly to try to help the cattle do what you'd like them to do. If we need to get the cattle to like go out that gate, we don't go stand in the gate because like the cattle are trying to push away from us, right? So we try to position ourselves to where the cattle want to go where we want them to go by where we position ourselves. So facilities play a big role in cattle handling because sometimes facilities aren't built very well as far as like setting up the cattle for success, as far as going where you want them to go. So a lot of the frustrations that come with cattle handling are oftentimes tied back to the facilities and can be fixed by changing your facilities. So, and I'm by no means am I like a great cattle handling expert, but I've tried to learn from some people that are and try to get a feel for where to position myself to keep the cattle comfortable, but get them to do what we need them to do. Because sometimes they need to go in, you know, we need to get them out of the pen, need to put them through the chute, they need to be vaccinated, treated, weighed, loaded on a trailer, they need to be handled. And so it's important to understand their flight zone though. The other thing that's really important as far as cattle handling is they have what's called like their point of balance. So it's right at their shoulder, where like if an animal is animal's looking at you and you're facing them, like they're feeling your pressure. If you get on the side of them and now you go past their shoulder, now that pressure switched to the other direction. And so now they're gonna be wanting to go away from you because you passed their shoulder. And so there's a lot of ways that when you get into handling cattle, you can position yourself and utilize that point of balance to get them to do what you want them to do. And the best case scenario is setting it up so that what you want them to do is what they want to do based on the pressure that's being applied. So these cattle are pretty gentle, so you can see like they're not really running off behind us or anything. If I go over the fence and get close to them, you'll see that they'll scoot away and maybe even kind of run away, not because they're really scared, but just like we got too close to their flight zone. McCoy, do you want to crawl through there? Yeah. Okay, go crawl through there and walk towards the heifers and we'll watch them move off the pressure. See how we got closer and some of them are like backing up because they're already starting to feel that pressure from us. Go ahead, McCoy. See, and now as McCoy gets closer, just nice and easy, bud, walk towards them. They're starting to move off of his pressure. But, you know, a minute ago when we were standing out here, they weren't feeling that pressure. They were good with just standing there watching us because they weren't feeling the pressure. But it's really interesting how just like, I mean, McCoy is 5 years old, 4 feet tall. He produces a pressure that they feel. So it's really interesting. I think it's important for humans to remember this too. Like everyone feels pressure. And if you just drive people nuts, pressuring them all the time, like what are they gonna do? They're not gonna act good. They're not gonna respond well to what you want them to do. So give people space, work with them. And that's the same with cattle. Just give them space, understand why they do or don't do what they do, and then work with them accordingly. Good job, McCoy. Perfect. So one of the kind of funny things about working cattle is people want to be helpful. And so they want to like help you work cattle, like whether you're sorting or running them through the chute or something, you know, people are like, oh, I can help you. Honestly, a lot of times the more people that try to work cattle, the worse it is, because if there's like, let's say there's like 6 people in the pens or in the alleys or whatever working the cattle, that's 6 sources of pressure that those cattle feel. And so if they're not all kind of on the same page about where to position themselves, you're going to be giving them mixed signals. Like one person might be trying to push them and someone else might be sending them back pressure. And so a lot of times it's better to have less people working cattle. Now, obviously, if it's a big group of cattle or whatever, sometimes more people are necessary. But in general, in close quarters, the more people, it can cause mixed signals as far as pressure goes from the cattle. One time we had someone pull up and Octavio and I were sorting some heifers and they're like, oh, hey, we'll help you guys before we leave. And it's like, okay. But it just ends up being like a kind of a mess. I don't know, my philosophy is when I go to a new place that's not mine and they're working cattle, I try to just kind of stay put until someone asks me to do something specific. And then it's like, okay, I can do that. But like, that way everyone knows like what I'm doing and why. It's kind of just an unspoken etiquette, I guess. You sniper. So it is nice to have some good horses around at a grow yard or a feedlot type situation, just because, you cover a lot of ground, and a lot of times it's not as conducive to like be on a four-wheeler. I mean, we still use like gators and four-wheelers and stuff to get around, but as far as like going into the cattle and like sorting or picking out a one that needs some attention, like because it's sick, or just in general, the cattle seem to respond a little bit better to the presence of a horse rather than you on the ground or like an ATV or something like that. So it is very helpful to have some good horses around at the yard. So we're just gonna get the next group of these heifers that are gonna go in and be worked into the chute. And these heifers really are just ideal in my mind as far as like a group of heifers that are like in good condition, good size, good health. They just look really good to me. I think they're gonna respond really well to the protocols and should have a really good success as far as getting them bred and getting them to stay pregnant. See how the flight zone almost seems to shrink down when you're on a horse? For some reason, they're a little bit more comfortable, I guess, when you're on a horse. Let's go, girls. Yep. I had to dump it out because we needed the bucket. So it's right there. But I need you not to put dirt in that, okay? Because we're using it to clean the... to clean this blue thing right here. Come on, heifer. Come on.
I got her.
You got her?
Thanks, McCoy.
Attaboy. So I was telling Sam earlier that this is, if I'm gonna be honest, this is my least favorite part of what we do. Like running cattle through the chute. Like it's a necessary thing to do, but it's just not really fun for anyone. The cattle don't really like it. Like we try to do it so that it's like as least stressful as possible. But I don't really like it. You know, it takes a while. It's loud. It's, you know, the cattle feel like they're pressured because they're close quarters, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do, but it's my least favorite part. So what we're doing is we are putting a controlled internal drug release device into these heifers intravaginally, and this releases progesterone for the duration of while it's in there. So in this particular protocol that we're doing, this cedar is going to stay inside for 2 weeks. So it's going to release progesterone for 2 weeks, which basically suppresses estrus or heat. So you're basically trying to say like, heifer, don't come into heat for the next 2 weeks while this is in there. And then when you pull it out, the natural thing is for the body to like have a heat, but we won't actually breed them at that heat. We'll wait another 16 days after that. And then we'll wait for that second heat after this comes out. So we this is called the applicator. We wash it off in water, disinfect it in chlorhexidine, insert the cedar, and then dip it in just like some pretty loose, light lubrication, and that way it goes in easier and comes out of the applicator easier once it goes in the heifer. It's like water, bud, but it's kind of slippery.
What is it?
It's called J-Lube. See that?
Is that it?
It's kind of yeah, that's how you mix water and that kind of powder, and then that's what makes it like slimy.
Nasty, Dad.
So this is all in an effort to synchronize heifers so that their heat, or when they're receptive to breeding, is in a closer time frame. Because when you breed artificially, you want to be able to do a lot of them at one time, so you don't have to watch 84 heifers for like 3 weeks. That would be extremely labor and time intensive. So that's why we synchronize, to try to decrease the amount of time it takes to catch them in heat. That's the medicine for the calves. We're not gonna give them any of that yet. They just get this.
Dad, when I put it in,
Mm-hmm. Can you squeeze those together? And then push. Attaboy. It's kind of hard. Good job.
and then you put it in, and I'll get
So you put it in there. Put it in the slimy stuff, okay? Just leave it sitting in there, okay? McCoy, walk towards me, please. Come on, girl. McCoy, walk towards me, please. Come on, girl. Up in the chute. Let's go. Oh my goodness. Come on, Effort. I guess she's not going. Come on.
Need to push more to pressure her?
Huh? Yeah. No, it's okay, bud. Leave it alone. Leave it there. No, leave it there, please. Leave it there, please. We're not gonna get that, okay? Just guys. We're gonna use the other heifers to push her up. If she might not even go then, huh? There you go. Come on.
Dad, can I do it?
Which part, bud? Good job. Squeeze them together. Push hard. Hey, McCoy, will you go move that chair, please? No, put that down, please. Will you go move that chair, please, so it's not in our way? Bring it back over here by the water, by the hose. Thank you. Come on, girl. Come on. Come on. No. Okay. Gotta load another one.
Dad, I want to get one out.
Okay, here.
Dang, look at all those things.
Pull one out. Attaboy. Load it up.
I'll squeeze it and then you push it in.
Okay. Squeeze it. Attaboy. Good job. You think so? Why do you think so?
I see her back.
You're pretty smart, McCoy.
That is the one.
I'll do this one, okay? You can load the next one. Hey, turn it around, bud, turn it around. Yeah, like that. See how this blue string? Make sure it's pointing up when you push it in, okay? Good job, bud. Now push. Atta boy. Dip it. Good job. Here, McCoy. We rinse it off?
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy our documentaries as much as we enjoy making them. Unfortunately, many of our videos don't earn enough YouTube revenue to afford the cost of production. But if you like our content, the best thing you can do is directly support it on Patreon. Plus, you'll get access to behind-the-scenes vlogs and commentary. If you're looking for something more in return, go to paragraphic.io where you can buy our other products and services. Alternatively, you can shop our Amazon storefront for our favorite equipment recommendations. Also, check out Boca, where you can find beneficial supplements to optimize your productivity. We especially love the lion's mane and mushroom gummies. And finally, consider signing up to Multitude, a platform built for long-form content, where you and other content creators can share and monetize new videos every week.